I've done Red Financial.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing Synchron. So sometimes in chess, right, you have to move backwards to make the thrust,
Right.
right? So now I'm probably a little back and
For the podcast. Welcome to Ofofo Studio. My guest for today is Mr. Sathya Prasad. Sathya is a director at Synchron. Synchron is an IT services company which specializes in BFSI and tech. Satya, welcome to the show.
hey, thanks, Uncle.
Yeah, so why don't we start by with your journey so far? Like, what was your first job? What do you do right now?
Sure. Uh, I really started as a freelance developer.
Okay.
That was my first job, and
Mhm.
post that I got an opportunity to work in a tech support firm called Q Support,
Okay.
and providing technical advice for various technical products.
Right.
Right. Uh, Prior to post that, I started off in TCS.
Mhm.
I really say that TCS was my first job because I started off as a trainee.
Okay.
Was there in TCS for about 8 years,
Oh wow. Okay.
and then with TCS got an opportunity to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
Basically worked in the US, worked in England,
Okay.
and then worked in Hong Kong as well,
Right.
and then came back and joined this captive,
Mm-hmm.
or the Global Capability Center as we call it today,
Mm-hmm.
called State Street Global Advisors.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So primarily was into application development and QA, and was there for about 11 years.
Okay.
And post that,
Mhm.
I got an opportunity to work with Alliance Data, which is now called Bread Financial,
Yeah.
and was there for about 4.5 years, and uh, you know uh, got an opportunity in Synchron to work in Synchron.
So how have your responsibilities evolved over the years? Let's see. What were you doing at TCS?
TCS, I was a plain vanilla developer. Started off as a developer,
Mm-hmm.
but over the years progressed into working as a manager,
Mm-hmm.
an architect,
Mm-hmm.
and took on various SDLC roles like a QA manager, an
Nice.
automation manager. So
Mhm.
that's what I really looked at.
You really worked your way up. Yeah. All right. And after that?
After that, I've primarily focused on being a global owner for applications,
Mm-hmm.
for about 15 applications from an SSJ standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Skills that came in there was basically helping in the captive setup
Mm-hmm.
and focusing on app dev
Okay.
and QA. And when you say QA, primarily focusing on automation.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So how have you seen that space evolve over the years? Like automation now is essential in order to survive, right? At that time it was a luxury. So like, how have you seen the shift happen?
So it's a huge shift, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at automation, see, one of the first things was testing. So
Right.
hey, where is the functional testing?
Yeah.
And in those days, documentation is scarce. I think
Yeah.
still it
It
is.
still is. Yeah.
Right? So testing was there was a lot of dependency on getting people to write those functional test cases.
Right. Right.
And from functional test cases, starting off with automation was basically people looked at automation only from moving from dev to UAT,
Yeah.
and from UAT to prod,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the automation was focused on a QA environment,
Right.
and where basically from development to move that particular code to UAT, right?
Right.
So if you looked at automation initially in those days, it was it was very tough. There were tools like Windrunner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you've heard of
No.
those
No idea.
tools, but
I'm post AWS. No idea. Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So it was very it was very detailed. It had to go through the whole cycle
Okay.
from a automation standpoint.
Mhm.
Today, automation is taken a very large scale leap if you
Right.
look at
Right.
it.
Right.
You can actually code just using plain vanilla English.
You don't even need to. Yeah. Exactly. Like you don't need to know
No
anything to code. Yeah.
code, right? So and it's moving away from this traditional Java Selenium to a more
Yeah.
simpler approach
Yeah.
from
But just prompts.
just prompts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the focus from an automation. Automation does a huge leap,
Mhm.
and one of the things that really helped
Mhm.
is like, hey, automation was only from dev to UAT, but today there's also automation which is called process automation,
Yeah.
which can be looked at it from in production.
Right.
So that's called robotic process automation,
Mhm.
where you can actually automate certain business process functions.
Exactly. Yeah. So what are some examples of those?
For example, if you look at it using any tools like Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism,
Yeah.
or for that matter, UiPath,
Mhm.
where you can go and automate a
Mhm.
business scenario like, hey, if an operation analyst is comparing debit versus credit,
Yeah.
you can actually go and automate that function, business function in production,
Got it.
using a tool like Automation Anywhere or UiPath. That is called process automation.
Yes. Yeah.
It's an extension of what automation was done in UAT, but it's more business driven.
Yeah.
So what you need with that is you'll need to know the daily volumes.
Yeah.
Is it repeatable?
Mhm.
There are certain business areas that you would really focus on, and that's where the whole concept of bots came in.
Right.
And today, it is, we go a step further. We say it's a AI assisted bot or a human bot.
Right.
So the two-eye check is done by the bot.
Yeah.
The four-eye check is done by the human.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you focused on more while you were working over there, like apart from your regular job?
Yeah. So apart from my regular job, I mean, there was a lot of interest. One of the things that I built in one of the companies is called user provisioning system.
Okay.
So what does the user provisioning system do?
Mhm.
Is it provisions the user
Mhm.
based on a certain workflow. Right.
Okay.
So assume a new candidate joins, a new associate joins the office. Now, based on the role and the title,
Yeah.
there are certain birthright accesses that could be given to that particular user,
Got it.
and and there are certain that could be done by it's a self
It's adaptive.
adaptive, and what happens is the user can actually go and request for a role.
Okay.
It will go through the approval process, depending on, sometimes it will go to the technical manager for approval or the business manager for approval,
Mhm.
and the person gets that particular role. So that whole provisioning system was a custom Java application based system that was built
Mhm.
to provide accesses. So
Yeah.
if you look at in most financial firms, right, they're generally audited for the accesses and the authorization.
Exactly. I am. Yeah.
So that is one key area. So that whole piece of development,
Mhm.
right? To give, what we try to do was, based on a job code, there's going to be some birthright accesses,
Right.
and there's going to be some that will be based on that role.
Right.
So,
Right.
so that whole thing was built on a tool.
Mhm.
Like, so for example, assume that you are you are a billing analyst
Yeah.
who's joined,
Mhm.
and you've got your basic accesses. Say, like, say for example, you've got your basic accesses to Outlook, the
Yeah.
Windows directory,
Right.
and say for example Workday.
Yeah.
Your basic
Regular
accesses
stuff.
are done. Maybe if you use a incident management system like a Remedy or a
Huh.
ServiceNow, you get your basic access.
Right.
Now, for that particular billing analyst,
Mhm.
is there an application that they use on a regular basis that they need access?
Yeah.
Now, do they need a specific access? Like, for example, do they need an access to APAC billing region?
Wow. Mhm.
Do they need access to Europe? So based on that, because the billing analyst is joined, and if they're tagged to one of the teams, whether it's APAC, Europe, or US,
Yeah.
what happens is the access is provisioned accordingly, which is automated.
Got it. Oh my God.
Today, SailPoint does that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
This is like
a decade back.
how come you never just broke it off to make a company of your own?
Yeah, so we were working in a financial firm, right? And
Right.
yes, those days funding was a
Yeah.
big issue, right?
Yeah.
And the access to a lot of the access was very limited,
Right.
right? And maybe the risk taking ability
Okay.
could be one of the areas. So that was there, and then and big tech firms were already there,
Yeah.
and they could spawn this up any day, and
Right.
so maybe the thought process was maybe I tried something else,
Yeah.
but doing this user provisioning system, you know, uh, gave a lot of possibilities, and it
I can
opened up a
imagine.
lot of
Yeah.
channels, especially when we did both the development and QA.
Right.
Uh, I'll give you an example. There's a problem called evil twin,
Okay.
right? In based on a role, right? What happens is, there could be roles that gives and grants accesses. But say, for example, a person or an associate moves from one department to another.
Yeah.
So what happens is it's a standard that the previous accesses to be removed.
Ah.
What happens if he leaves the team?
Right.
I mean, and for example, he leaves the company. How long you're going to keep his access, right?
Yeah.
And it's very important that the whole workflow from onboarding to offloading,
Yeah.
right, is tracked in this particular provisioning system.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
So it generally what happens is it's all done. The Active Directory is kept inactive maybe for a year or
For a year or
so.
so. Yeah.
So that's the standard processes,
Yeah.
right? But most firms, most banking financial firms are audited
Mhm.
for their access and authorization
How frequently?
very frequently. It could be semi-annually, it
Okay.
could be annually.
Yeah.
So it depends on what type of audit it is. Like if it's a SOX audit,
Uh-huh.
it could happen every quarter.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, banks have to be a lot more stringent when it comes to these things, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, how difficult, how different is it to build application for banks from building it like normally for other use cases?
Yeah. See, banks. See, one of the key things from banks is, hey, you should be very clear on the access and the authorization. So
Right.
when you say access, what is the ability of the person to move money?
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So if the person is able to move and approve movement of money,
Yeah.
it needs to be really focused on. So
Uh-huh.
that's why banks came out with the concept of mandatory leave for people who are able to move and approve money.
Oh,
So there's sometimes they have the 5 days mandatory leave, 10 days mandatory leave.
how does that work? Like, I don't understand.
Okay, so what happens is if you are in a position
Hmm.
where you can approve money transfers,
Okay.
right, or payments,
Yeah.
right, the thing is that there is a dependency for the bank that hey, we should be able to process the payment or not process the payment even if he's there or not there. So
Right.
there is no dependency on that particular person.
But isn't it divided among like a group, or is it just one person?
And it could be a group of people. So that's
Okay.
where that's where the planning happens, so that there is a backup. So
Yeah.
that means the payment does not get,
Yeah.
and
For yeah.
to prevent fraud,
Yeah.
and also to make sure that hey, whatever we are approving,
Yeah.
if we are approving for the right thing,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So from an application, so when you look at building applications for banks, one is the access and authorization. What's the business workflow,
Hmm.
right? Banks are not very open to using open source.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
So because of the threats that they receive,
Right.
so they are not very open to using open source. So
Hmm.
they would go for a third party product. They would install it and then do custom development over it.
Right.
So banks traditionally are conservative when it comes to development, right? They're very conservative. But if you look at all the design patterns when it comes to development, it's all there,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And banks have scaled up.
Mm-hmm.
And today, mostly people used to call themselves as a system application developer.
Right.
We call them SAD, right? Today, people have moved on.
Yeah.
Now with the coming in of AI,
Huh.
right? With especially Gen AI,
Yeah.
there's a lot of need for Gen AI developers,
Right.
right?
Well, basically just prompt engineers. No?
No, prompt engineering is one, right? See,
Okay.
fine tuning is a skill, right?
Of course. Yeah.
So what happens is, if you look at AI from an AI standpoint, right? Uh, One aspect is of all what happens in the background, the machine learning, the
Right.
NLPs,
Right.
etc. One aspect is fine tuning, right? There's also something like a responsible AI, right?
Yeah.
So putting in guardrails, right?
Okay. Hmm.
See now, we also have to make sure that hey, how do we prevent any data leakages?
Mm-hmm.
One,
Mm-hmm.
like how do we prevent them? How do we know what the AI is doing? What
Right.
is the internal architecture? Whether there is no other threats
Yeah.
for the for our application that is using
Yeah.
AI, right? So there are lots that can be done from a AI safety standpoint, AI security standpoint, being responsible from an AI, right? So and if you look at all these large language models that are there, they definitely we need to put guardrails around it. So
What are these guardrails? How?
for guardrails, for example, simple things
Yeah.
like uh, as a user, you could ask AI any particular question,
Absolutely.
right? Now, you want to use it for a business application and you want to put guardrails, making sure that context is understood by the large language model,
Okay.
right? For example, just to tell you, like, hey, anything that is religious or any political view, or
Right.
for example, how to make a bomb, etc., needs to be guarded so that the AI understands that, hey, any questions asked in these contexts,
Mm-hmm.
a political view or a religious thing, the AI goes back and responds with a standard answer. So
Right.
guardrails in that,
Yeah,
and
got it.
anything like storing of personal sensitive information
Yes.
from a
Yeah.
PCI standpoint of view.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I should not be foolish enough to store my social security number
Of
or
course.
a PAN card number with the large language model.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you put guardrails among that? Right.
Okay.
So those things, because what happens is you're definitely caching all the data.
Mm-hmm.
So putting guardrails from a data standpoint
Right.
is very critical, so that the large language model understands. So it is garbage in, garbage out. See, if you really look at, like, the model learns everything that you expose it to.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So you got to be very careful about what you're feeding.
yes,
In.
and
Yeah.
any area that you want to put a guardrail, you do.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. What were you doing at Bread?
So, Brett, I was in charge of IT.
Okay.
So when I say IT, it was primarily four big groups then.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure operations, focusing on cloud, focusing on desktop and network support. In addition to that, it was information security.
Okay.
So in information security, the primarily focus was on providing the access,
Right.
right? So information security, providing access to the various teams based on your job code
Yeah.
and your role.
Uh-huh.
I also looked at application development and QA.
Mm-hmm.
It was called system development and solutions and enterprise architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So these were the four broad teams I looked at. So we built teams from scratch.
Wow.
Over about 120 people
Wow.
over a period of 4 years,
Hmm.
right? And it was focusing on these areas
Hmm.
primarily.
So how do you go about building a team that size and with such different capabilities?
Sure. So one thing is that basically understand what is expected in each of these different groups. So one thing
Okay.
is to understand what is the skill and the experience requirement.
Let's just focus on one of those, right? Let's just talk about information security.
Sure.
How do you go about approaching the right talent so that it fits in with what you want?
Sure. So first, what happens is you have to have a discussion with the US stakeholder on what is the expectation and what is the expectation of the job and what is the expectation of the role.
Right.
Right. And you need to have a fair understanding of, hey, how many positions you have,
Yeah.
what's the kind of structure from a position standpoint,
Yeah.
and how do you want to go about implementing, and when do you say you're production ready.
Right.
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 So what we do is we have discussions, we discuss, hey, these are the job roles, here's the job description, this is how the org structure will look,
Mm-hmm.
right? And and what we do is, we make sure that we hire the leader first,
Okay.
and then go and hire the rest of the people, right?
Right.
Also, we also go and look, hey, when you look at the work, we look at it, hey, are these based on SOPs?
Yeah.
Okay. How much of the analytical mind is required?
Right.
So are these simple from a from an SOP standpoint that can just be done and executed?
Right.
So what are the tools that are used? Like, say, for example, in information security, you could use tools like ServiceNow, you could
Yeah.
use tools like Workday, you
Yeah.
could use tools like like SailPoint.
Yeah.
So what are the different tools? And then you also, when you look at information security, you'll have to see the vastness. Like, hey, how many applications do we need to provide?
Right.
So one is from the applications, right? That's standard, right? So like I said, right, birthright accesses. What are some of the birthright accesses that are given, right? Like, say simple things like Outlook,
Yeah.
Windows AD,
Yeah.
maybe a Workday login, maybe a
Right.
ServiceNow login. But when you go beyond that, you'll have to see, hey, okay, there are most BFS companies have about 100 applications in their kitty. So
Right.
how many applications do you need to provision?
Right.
Like, can they be automated? Like,
Mhm.
what is your training plan to get these people onboarded to and test it
Right.
and make sure that they do it? So one of the things that we do very well is called, which I implemented, is called the follow the sun model.
What is that? What is that?
So what happens in follow the sun model is, one of the advantages of being a global capability center in India is, hey, we have a time zone advantage.
Yeah.
So we can do all the requests
Mm-hmm.
and we can provision all of them during our daytime,
Yeah.
and we can hand over
Yeah.
during
That's
our
super
daytime
efficient.
to the US team, so
Yeah.
they can continue with what is required.
Right.
So if you look at information security, so you should know what is the workflow. So hey, how do these tickets come? Is it through incidents? Like, is it through a ServiceNow incident? That's
Yeah.
one piece,
Yeah.
right? The other piece is like, hey, we've talked about only user accounts. What about system accounts?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have system accounts. You have you should make sure what's the process of it.
Hmm.
Then in user accounts there are different types. One is a plain vanilla user account. There is another type which is called the firewall account.
Okay.
Like, so what is a firewall account? For this is specifically like for an IT user to go to production and to resolve some issue.
Ah.
Like we call that a
Yeah.
firewall account. So you go in and that's a highly audited account.
Of course.
So,
Yeah.
so it's like it could be a DB account, it could be a Unix account.
Right.
So what happens is it is only open for a certain set of hours. Say, for
Okay.
example, 11 hours.
Right.
It goes through an approval process and it is audited.
Yeah.
Also, what happens is there's also a group setup where there's a meeting there's a meeting set up across the stakeholders to understand, hey, why was the firewall account used?
Mm-hmm.
How can we prevent this?
Yeah.
Right, like could we build an application so that the business user itself can
Yeah.
resolve on it on their own?
Yeah.
Or is the firewall account necessary, not necessary? Could we go and develop, enhance the application?
Yeah.
Right, and is it a valid
Right.
firewall account to
Yeah.
do it? Right.
Yeah.
So it's audited.
Right.
And so what happens is that also gives a backlog to the development team
Yeah.
to go back and build
Yeah.
and make the applications more robust
Right.
from a development standpoint.
Got it.
So if in a nutshell, right, a summary, whenever you're looking at, you have to look at a whole transition plan.
Of course.
Right. So you create you basically understand what needs to be transitioned, say from US to Bangalore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What needs to be transitioned? You need to be very clear on your process,
Mm-hmm.
your process, your tools
Yeah.
and technology, and the people. So
Yeah.
these three things come in very handy to do any transition and to be any success and to be very successful. And one of the things that I really like to do is create metrics.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you go about, like, how do you, that I was going to ask you that, like, what's an ideal dashboard for you? Like,
Yeah, so it depends who the stakeholder is.
okay, let's.
So now, for
Yeah.
example, if it's an information
Yeah.
a security stakeholder in
Right.
the US,
Right.
so first and foremost, we'll give, hey, what was the number of provisioning that was done in that week? I'm just
Right.
giving an example.
Yeah.
That week, say you had 100 applications. In each application, what's the provisioning?
Like, yeah.
Okay, so how much time did it take? That is one. So you clearly call out, say, for example, I'm just giving you an example. Application A, we provision 50 users.
Yeah.
Okay. Application B, 10 users.
Hmm.
Application C, 200 users.
Wow.
Okay. I'm just giving it. So there's a plethora of provisioning.
Right.
Okay. So provisioning is basically granting access.
Right.
Right. Now there is one is called grant. There's another where you modify and update the access.
Okay.
Right. So for example, if a new user it is,
Yeah.
you grant access.
Right.
Or if someone did not have access, you grant.
Yeah.
But there are some people who have access and now the application is enhanced, or
There's something
new
there.
that is there. So you have to modify the access.
Yeah.
The other part which I have to tell you is one about provisioning is also termination.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Of
So
course. Yeah.
you need to terminate, right?
Yeah.
So suppose, for example, if now a person's role has changed, so what you do is you'll have to revoke access.
Yeah.
Right. So you grant, you modify, you revoke. How many you have done? Okay.
Yeah.
How long did it take you? You can do one segregation on applications. You can, based on the number of resources you have, you can say, hey, each associate did so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that gives you a KPI of the volume.
Right.
Right. So that's volume. Then what happens is, hey, you can also look at, hey, what are the SOPs done?
Yeah.
Was there anything that had to change and modify on the SOPs from a provisioning standpoint?
Got it.
So you look at it, hey,
useful. Yeah.
yeah. So that particular business user, that particular operational user will actually, they follow an SOP,
right,
from a provisioning standpoint.
Yeah.
So
That's
have
your
you made any?
constitution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you made any modifications to the SOP?
Right.
Have you published it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you got it reviewed and published?
Right.
Right. So look at what are the deviations. Like, sometimes, there could be deviations from a provisioning standpoint. What are those and why was it required?
Right.
Right. So if you look at it, then terminations, right? Terminations is when people exit.
Right.
Right. So you have to terminate the account. So how many terminations were done?
Yeah.
So this would give a high level of, provisioning and termination from a access standpoint to our business stakeholder. Right. Now, The other opportunity comes in is where is how much of this can be automated. Some
Yeah.
of it is manual.
I was going to ask that. Yeah.
So some of this is manual.
Yeah.
Can you automate this?
Hmm.
What does it require to automate?
Right.
Can you do it with a simple Perl script or a Unix script,
Hmm.
or does it require
A console.
something more?
Yeah.
Right. So for that, one is to understand the workflow.
Mm-hmm.
You describe the workflow, you understand it,
Yeah.
and then see if the development team can help you automate it. And by a click of a button, can this be automated? And what is the savings that it will give you from an automation?
Projections.
So then what
Yeah.
happens is a person doing provisioning is uplifted and
Absolutely.
can take on other work. Like what are the other work?
Yeah.
It could be identity engineering.
Yeah.
It could be, sale point review and audits, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you scale up the team
Yeah.
by first setting the base. So what happens is you set up with the base with basic provisioning and terminations.
Right.
You take it a level up. You start doing quarterly audits. There's another aspect which I have to tell you is called recertification.
What does that mean?
So what recertification means is, for example, suppose I report to you and I work for you. You as a manager should recertify if my access is right and as per the need of the company.
Well, what's the cadence?
So the cadence is generally 6 months.
Okay.
It's generally 6 months. It's semi-annually.
Mm-hmm.
It's 6 months, once in 6 months, and it's once in a year.
Okay.
Right. So the cadence becomes also depends on if the team member has moved from one team to another.
Yeah.
So then again, there's a process of the recertification can take place, and it depends also. It could be once a quarter as well, depending on if
How
the
critical
Fed
is it?
wants to audit you
Yeah,
more.
yeah.
So it could be that. So recertifications and is another important aspect. Recertification from a user and a system standpoint.
Yeah.
So that a manager can do if I'm reporting to you. What about applications?
Right.
Like, hey, this list of, say, for example, Workday,
Hmm.
right? Hey, these are the people who have admin access. These are the people who have super admin access.
Yeah.
These are the people who have user access, read
Right.
only. So
Yeah.
even as a business owner, I should also be able to certify.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that whole process can. So what you do is you start with provisioning.
Mm-hmm.
You go up.
Mm-hmm.
You take up recertifications. You take up audits.
Right.
Then you can start doing application audits, etc. And then you upgrade yourself. You can go into doing identity engineering and things like that. Then you can start being more niche and specialized
Right.
in information security. But what happens is your base, you get it.
Yeah.
Right, access.
Yeah.
So what happens is access. You'll provision about 100 applications, maybe 50 platforms,
Yeah.
different databases,
Yeah.
Different operating systems.
Yeah.
You upgrade.
Huh.
You know what is the recertification process. Then
Yeah.
again you upgrade. You'll start doing identity engineering. Then you'll start tracking. Hey,
Wow.
where is it going wrong?
Yeah. So like this sounds fairly comprehensive, Satya. I'm surprised this isn't a product by itself.
Yeah, because of the complex nature,
Yeah.
right? Because of the complex nature. Because if you look at it, there's so much variety of products.
Absolutely.
Like you just look at cloud.
Yeah.
You have about 6 or 7 or 10 flavors of cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in cloud, there's so much functionality.
Yeah.
Like you have the provisioning of the VMs.
Yeah.
You have analytics.
Yeah.
You have now
It's
if you have
way more than
operate-
that, like more than 250, I think. On
you have so many
Yeah.
functions and services,
Right.
right? So then building a product. So what happens is, I think it takes time,
Yeah.
right? So you can start off with small. I think SailPoint has got it to a certain extent,
Mm-hmm.
but building a product like this needs a lot of custom, especially for companies. They need a lot of custom development for companies, and generally most people will not go for an end-to-end product when it comes to security. They
Yeah,
want
but like you could always supplement it with managed. You could be a managed service platform, right?
correct. You could be a managed service platform, and see, one of the key things here is integration with other third-party applications and tools.
Right.
Right.
Most of them have APIs. It's fairly easy these days, no?
It is. See, the APIs, etc., are easy, right?
Yeah.
So the point here is volumes matter.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Volumes matter, and and especially in maybe in startups, they're not as much as they are audited in the BFS
I was
firms.
gonna ask you that too. So, like, what are those audits like? You just touched upon some bank getting audited by the Fed.
Correct.
So, what is that process like? What do they look for
So
in the US and in India?
yeah, see, one of the things that they definitely look for is the access piece.
Absolutely, yeah.
So a standard audit will look for your access. They
Mhm.
look at how you manage your change control processes,
Yeah,
your change management. How is it done?
yeah,
Right? Who has access to production?
right.
And do they really need it?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
So they want to make sure. And what are your other testing? Like, hey, how often do you do your penetration testing?
yeah,
What did you find from penetration testing?
right.
And how did you go and
Patch that.
patch that? So
Yeah.
so basically they audit the systems,
Mm-hmm.
they audit the applications. So they make sure that all these audits,
Hmm.
they have a particular focus and objective to meet. And this is to make sure that, like from a bank standpoint, to make sure that the stakeholders' interest and the investors' interest are protected.
Right.
So
Obviously.
they want to make sure that the audit facilitates the stakeholders and the interest of the investors
Right.
and the end users, so that nobody goes into a bankruptcy just all of a sudden. So they want to make sure that these things are audited.
Okay, okay, all right. So I know that you're a chess enthusiast as well. Are there any parallels that you could draw between chess and the work that you do?
Oh yeah. Chess is an incredible game, right? So
Yeah.
I tell people that I play with left hand.
Why is that?
I use my right brain. And I keep telling them that, hey, there's nothing right in my right brain and there's nothing left in my left brain. So uh, chess is a wonderful sport. And
Yeah.
see, one of the objectives in chess is to checkmate,
Obviously.
right?
Yeah.
And if you look at chess as a game, it has only 64 squares, but the permutation combinations is infinite.
Yeah, it's
Right,
infinite. Yeah.
right. And in chess, I keep telling my associates and my people and my friends, there's so much things that you can learn.
Yeah.
Like for example, during my engineering days, we learned something called the n queens problem.
Yeah.
Right. So the n queens problem simply states that, hey, how do you place 8 queens on a chessboard
Mm-hmm.
such that they don't kill each other?
Right. Yeah.
It's a fantastic permutation and combination to work on.
Is it possible though?
It is.
Okay.
And there are so many. The
There are
amount of
multiple combinations.
multiple combinations
I wouldn't have
yeah. So
imagined. Yeah.
imagine. So it's functionally it's based on discrete mathematics,
Okay.
right? So chess, if you look at it, it's a game at the end, and
Yeah.
life is a game. You have to play it,
Yeah.
right? And in chess, if you see, sometimes you will move forward, and the only thing that can move forward is a pawn till it becomes a king,
Right.
or I mean, sorry, till it becomes a queen.
Whatever you want. Yeah.
Right? All other pawns, I mean, all other coins
Pieces.
on pieces on the chessboard, right, can move backward and forward.
Right.
So for me, in life, I tell people that, hey, life is, life.
You're not a pawn.
Yeah, you're not a pawn, and definitely you can be a queen or a horse,
Right.
right? Ultimately, what happens is in chess, you make moves forward, but sometimes you might make moves backwards. But then that backward is it's not a setback or a failure, but
Right.
it's just a option to just thrust forward and win.
Right.
Right. So chess is a fantastic game. I used to play really well until my sons friends started beating me up. So now I don't play much, but
Yeah. That you should let that discourage you, no?
true.
Yeah.
True,
Yeah.
but it's a fantastic sport, and especially for strategies,
Right.
it really helps.
Yeah.
And I keep telling that it's a thinking game,
It is. Yeah.
and you can think ahead. You can some people can think ahead of 50 moves, 60 moves,
Yeah.
right? And we do have some chess grandmasters in India as well.
Yeah.
So it's definitely helps helps
Develop that
your
analytical
whole
thinking.
thinking
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
But it's also there's a lot of philosophy from a chess standpoint.
Like
I just told you,
like
right?
this one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
if sometimes like if you look at my career, right, I'm on a trajectory note. Like if you look at it, hey, I've been I've been a
Yeah. I mean,
developer.
yeah.
I've been a vice president.
Right.
I've been a senior director. I've been a
Yeah.
director. So we all go through our stages in our career.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at me from a IT standpoint,
Yeah.
I'm jack of all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I have infrastructure.
Yeah.
I have information security.
Yeah.
I have application development and QA,
Right.
enterprise architecture. So probably there's a lot of knowledge, and there's also depth in certain areas, right?
Yeah. That probably puts you in like 99.99 percentile, I think.
It does, it does, but sometimes being a jack of all is not great. It's good for companies that
Yeah, I think I like that approach better. It again, like, both have their own pros and
yeah
cons, as opposed to, like, having really deep knowledge in one area, as opposed to, like, covering ground with a lot of knowledge about a lot of things.
yeah. So I believe that that is like a T skill, but I
Mm.
believe in multiple T skills. Most people believe in T just like a T,
Uh-huh.
like meaning, hey, I know IT end to end like an SDLC and a agile way,
Right.
like all the different parts, and then specializing in Java.
Right.
But for me, I believe in multiple T skills. Like if you are a IT enthusiast,
Yeah.
right? You should know a little bit about development.
Yeah.
You should know a little bit about testing,
Yeah.
and you should know in detail, right? You should have done that. So what I tell most people is, hey, you need to know one programming language,
Yeah.
one database,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
One database, one operating system, one messaging system.
Yeah.
So what happens is
That's
that
really good advice. Yeah.
yeah, so that'll make you well rounded,
Right.
and you can prevent your ransomware attacks. You can prevent your your uh, uh, anything,
Right. Yeah,
malware.
malware.
So you can if the aspect of end to end is known,
Yeah. Hmm.
you can probably think in 360 and protect the firm.
Got it. Let's focus that idea of 360 into your own life. What kind of media do you consume? What's your how do you decompress?
How do I decompress? So see, media. I have a lot of reading that I do.
Okay.
Okay, so I read various websites
Wow.
to stay ahead in technology.
Like, for the viewers.
For the viewers, some of the things that I do is I go through the Analytics AI magazine.
Okay.
So there's something like Alpha Signal
Uh-huh.
that keeps me updated from AI and Gen AI, which is my interest for the last 6 to 8 months.
Nice.
So that's one particular blog that I read,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are various other mediums like medium.com
Mm-hmm.
has a specialized reading
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to various areas of interest, whether cybersecurity.
Right.
So I try to keep myself updated in the cybersecurity space as well.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, LinkedIn has got a lot of articles that come in
Right.
through the LinkedIn medium.
Yeah.
So one is reading through
Uh-huh.
that.
Uh-huh.
The others is through interaction.
Right.
Right. So I get to meet various people, various clients, various companies. Try to understand what their pain points are.
Right.
Try to understand, hey, what's troubling them, what's keeping them awake.
Right.
So
Right.
go back and then do my homework as well.
Yeah.
So for me to decompress, reading helps.
Reading helps. Yeah.
Reading helps, and then I think it's very important.
Do you read fiction?
I do read fiction.
Okay.
I do read fiction, but I feel right now I read a lot of leadership and
What are you reading right now?
see. Generally, I read books from a person by name Prakash Iyer.
Prakash Iyer.
Okay,
Okay.
so one of the books that I would recommend people to read is called The Habit of Winning.
The Habit of Winning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So generally, most people these days, right, they're not fond of reading
Yeah.
because if you look at it, it's 5 seconds.
Attention span is
Attention span is 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So then, how do I advise, the Gen Z? I don't know what you call them today. So the Gen Z guys, like, or girls, how do you advise them from a reading perspective? I say, hey, invest 250 rupees for this book.
Mm-hmm.
You've played book cricket. Have you heard of book
Yeah,
cricket?
yeah.
So,
It's cool. Yeah.
so what I say is that, hey, if you've played book cricket, take a book,
Uh,
take this book called
Yeah.
Habit of Winning,
uh-huh. Just
right?
play book cricket with it.
Play book cricket with it.
Yeah.
So, what do you mean by book cricket?
Yeah.
So, you just open the book up
Randomly. And then,
randomly.
Yeah.
So, then what happens is, are you in the middle of the story or are you in the start of the story? Because this book is based on short story, a short 2 or 3 or 4 pages or 5 pages at max.
Nice.
So what you do is you go 2 pages before, finish that story,
Yeah.
read. So, when I read, so what I do is it's very important to remember.
Mm-hmm.
It's
How-
very so.
How do you do? How do you ensure that you remember everything?
So sometimes I mark it on the book,
Okay.
and sometimes I write it down,
Okay.
and then sometimes I come and speak. Right. So
Yeah.
it's very important to remember and recall and reproduce.
Right.
So for me that is very key because some stories need to be told,
Absolutely.
and you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Mhm.
And you can go through someone else's experience. So, Prakash Iyer has written a lot of books on leadership as well,
Mhm.
and that's something. Those short stories have helped me,
Yeah.
to come back and tell different stories in various situations and various forums.
That's amazing. Amazing. So, what's your normal day like? What's your routine?
So these days, my routine right now, I'm in the high technology space and the
Yeah.
fintech space.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on innovation,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
We go to office about 2 or 3 days in a week.
Okay.
So we go to office, and my routine starts off with a meeting with my boss,
Okay.
and we make sure that hey, what are the items that we need to follow up on?
Right.
Make sure we close those things.
Yeah.
And is there a client visit? Is there something that I need to prepare?
Right.
So make
Are
sure.
there any productivity tools that you use?
Yeah, we use a lot of productivity tools. So that's a key part of the work that we do, right? So
Okay.
like I'll just give you an example. Like
Yes. Yeah.
so, we're all in this Gen AI space, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if you look at productivity, right, uh, Microsoft has recently launched a product called Copilot.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you look at it, it's called GitHub Copilot.
Yes.
They made a big launch. They made a thing, and what happens is the GitHub Copilot helps developers, to code during their code stages, right?
Right.
So what happens is so how do you improve productivity, right? So the whole SDLC stage has to be looked at.
Right.
So you can improve productivity through the stage of the SDLC. So when you look at SDLC, it's like, hey, you got the requirements, you've built the software,
Yeah.
you've tested it,
Yeah.
you put it into production, and then you maintain it. It can go through any framework, right?
Right.
So everywhere you can improve productivity. So today what happens is with tools like Copilot,
Yeah.
right? It helps to improve productivity of developers. And Copilot is just one tool that's come in with Microsoft,
Hmm.
right? My firm has our own tool,
Right.
which we look at productivity as well, right?
Do you want to say the name out loud?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Or not.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. So what happens is we can. So
yeah.
so what happens is so what we've done is we've compared tools
Hmm.
in our firm, and we've seen that the productivity definitely increases at least by 30 to 40%,
Hmm.
right? So from coding, right? So like for example, if you look at, right, you can generate code from scratch
Hmm.
using an LLM,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So and what happens is uh, you can generate code from scratch. You can make sure that hey, you're testing all the securities, you're testing this review, you're making sure there is all those aspects are fine tuned before you check it in,
Right.
and then the build happens,
Mm-hmm.
and then the deployment happens,
Yeah.
right? So in all these stages you can continuously check the code and the developer's productivity,
Right.
right? So what happens is you can give various options. Hey, what is a better way of utilizing a particular memory type,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like a data type. Hey, is this the appropriate data type? If you know what are the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements while you're coding,
Right.
right? It makes it easier for you to code,
Right.
and also make sure that before you check in, you can instead of running the tool after checking, you
Yeah.
can actually run it before
Before. Yeah.
and prevent any leakages, etc.
Yeah.
From a coding standpoint. So productivity is a great thing, and I see there's a like tools like Copilot definitely helps developers. It's not going to remove developers.
Of course not.
It's helping their productivity, and especially people who have gone through a developer's experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what we've seen is people with say 4 to 14 years of experience.
Hmm.
Copilot and tools like them, like for example, Copilot is Microsoft's tool.
Yeah.
Code Whisperer is AWS's tool.
AWS. Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens is they definitely improve productivity by 30 to 40% of a developer,
Yeah.
right? But please understand there are also other people involved
Yeah.
in the whole cycle.
Yeah.
There are people like BAs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There are people like automation testers.
Right.
There are people who do the DevOps pieces to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, productivity tools help everybody,
Right.
right?
Right.
And one of the things that we're looking at is also the happiness quotient.
How do you measure that?
So you can do a survey,
Okay.
and you can say, hey, after the person, it's like a retrospective.
Okay.
Hey, did this tool really help you?
Yeah.
And did you feel better rather than going and Googling and going to Stack Overflow for the solution, right?
Yeah.
So what we saw is that, hey, the developers really felt happier,
Yeah.
and it's also reduced their time, thinking time, and that searching, the analytical time,
Right. Right.
by the feedback and the suggestions that were given.
Yeah.
But is it all perfect? No.
Does it improve the quality of code?
Yes, it does improve the quality of code, and we've definitely seen that.
Okay.
And that's why I said the recommendations given by the Copilot or the Code Whisperer or our tool
Yeah.
is definitely far superior because it's gone through a thing. So that's where the
It's got specialized test cases.
yeah,
So I
these,
think.
so that's where your fine tuning and prompt engineering comes in, and that's where you fine tune the LLM, the large language model. You set up, hey, what's the coding guidelines, right? You set up, hey, these are the coding guidelines,
Right.
right? These are the coding guidelines. Hey, client server architecture looks like this.
Yeah.
MVP architecture looks like. So you train you train your LLM, the large language model that you're using, to the way that you want from a coding standpoint.
And you can have like multiple variations of that, right? So how do you? Okay, so you train them across everything.
Across. So you set up the context, keep training, and then there's also an option where assume that the LLM tells you an answer that you were not satisfied. You can suggest. You can say, hey, I expected this answer, but you gave me this.
Right.
So then the LLM will go back and relearn and set the context again, and will tell you why the recommendation was given. So definitely, if you look at it, productivity improves from a coder perspective.
Yeah.
See, I mean, please not only look at generate code. Now, for example, if you want to migrate, like if you look at most, banks and most firms, right, they're all having legacy systems, right? And in some of these legacy systems, there's no documentation.
Of course not. Yeah.
So then, imagine if you have a feature where, you go to the LLM and say, hey, explain this code to me. It'll build you up an English document, which could be used by a BA analyst to prepare a tech spec. So productivity in general is not only for developers, but across the SDLC. And, you need to train and fine tune. So metrics plays an important role.
Right.
Right. And
everywhere.
And I'd like to tell the generation that, hey, please be aware that you won't lose your jobs. You'll have to learn and reskill yourself.
Right.
And and it's very important. And another thing that I really like to tell the generation is, even my generation, right, that hey, we definitely have to reskill. That is one thing that we definitely have to reskill. Right. So we should be open to learning.
Yes.
Learning is very fundamental. But one aspect I really want to tell you, it's in the details.
Okay.
Right? Not the surface.
Yeah.
Right. You have to get into the details. Like if you're doing a specific kind of work, it's important to know the details around it. Right. And don't always depend on your large language models to tell you the right thing. But learn. Go and read about how design patterns are implemented. What are the different frameworks that are there? What are the security tools that are there that is available in the market? How can it help and improve my coding ability?
Right.
Like, why is it that we're having so many threats and attacks? Right. Ransomware attacks.
Why do you think? What's the reason according to you?
Internet is not safe. It's too vast.
Are you guarded about your own data?
Oh, I'm definitely, I'm very concerned that, hey, I think the internet knows a lot about us. So what I read was, Bill Gates or any of these founders, they don't give their children a mobile phone or an iPad.
Till they're 16 or 18, I think. Yeah.
Right? So I think, information security is everyone's responsibility.
Yeah.
Your data is data. Expose only what you want to expose from a data standpoint.
Right.
Be mindful. Be aware. Right. It's about awareness. It's not about paranoia.
It's exactly.
It's you should be aware about what you want to expose.
Yeah.
Now, in this generation, we have statuses, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have TikTok, right?
Yeah.
We update our statuses. Fine.
Yeah.
We can be an influencer.
Right.
Do it. Fine. But be mindful.
Yeah.
And that is very key. That awareness is a very key.
Right.
Like what you want to.
You have to be able to think like a hacker, maybe.
Correct.
And see what can be used in the frame. What's in the frame? You've got to be.
Yeah. So generally what I say is like, in a scale, right? In a scale, you have two extremes.
Right.
Right. Some are very paranoid about, very paranoid. It's one extreme, meaning they will, hey, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
Right. And the other one is, they totally expose themselves.
My parents.
But so what happens is we should be somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Right. You should know what you're doing. So, so what I tell people is before you do anything, pause, take a deep breath, relax, think, and then don't do a reply, respond.
What's the difference between the two?
The two, reply is instantaneous, it's a reaction.
Okay.
Right? It's a reaction.
Yeah.
Response, you pause.
Thought of.
You thought.
Yeah.
I'm not saying overthinking.
Yeah.
I'm saying, be aware.
Right.
Be aware of surrounding, who's watching you,
Yeah.
who's listening to you,
Yeah.
right? It's very important. And I mean, while you download, be more careful. Like, just don't download an application just because it's there in the Play Store or in cloud,
Yeah.
and it says X certified.
Yeah.
Be careful, right?
Right.
Like you said, right? APIs, right? Nowadays everything is an API.
Yeah.
And one of the things is, because there's a generation gap about learning, and people need to be, every area of work needs to be tech savvy.
Yeah.
I mean,
You can't do without it.
you can't do without it. Whether you're a doctor,
Yeah.
whether you're an insurance agent,
Right.
whether you're a banker,
Yeah.
or whether you're a student, you need to be tech savvy. No one can ever complain that I don't know how to use a smartphone.
Right.
That cannot be a complaint like that.
Right.
And awareness is the key. So, how do you build awareness? Be updated. Subscribe to Ofo, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Subscribe to Ofo, read
Got
their
you.
security alerts and for their news, right?
Yeah.
Do that. And so you should definitely subscribe to a security news. So that awareness is important. And yes, don't get paranoid about some words and jargons that are used. You can always go and learn on those jargons, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also know your role that you play.
Right.
So sometimes abstraction is very key.
Yes.
Abstraction. So you don't need to know everything. Go to the experts when you have to.
Yeah.
Take the doctor's advice when you have to take the doctor's advice. Google is not the doctor.
Yeah.
Take the cybersecurity person's advice, because he's the expert in cybersecurity, right?
Right.
So that's where the key is,
Right.
right?
Right.
But today, with knowledge being freely available,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to judge who's the expert and who's
Yeah.
the certifying authority.
So much misinformation out there. Yeah.
So much misinformation. So how do you protect that?
Yeah.
Right. So we can build a product around it, right? But then the vastness
Yeah.
and the permutation combinations are
Just too much.
just too much.
Yeah.
So I think large language models, AI, if used responsibly, if used ethically, can definitely shape the world. And a
Right.
lot of the mundane jobs
Mhm.
can be taken care by the large language models. But our focus should not be on paranoia of what AI could do,
Yeah.
but see how you can enhance yourself
Right.
with AI, and things like patch management and vulnerability management. They may be the last things on the minds of on the minds of the firms.
Shouldn't
But
be.
today,
Yeah.
it's
probably really critical.
it is very critical to business, because
Yeah.
one is, you need to run the firm and protect the firm,
Right.
right?
Right.
That protection is very key.
Yes. Yeah.
So no point, if you look at most of the ransomware attacks, if you see, everything is in hindsight.
Yeah.
Then you're only left with negotiation.
Right. 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 Well, people are not proactive about it. Eh? It's mostly
Correct.
reactive stuff.
Correct.
that- yeah.
And the other part you should also know is the availability of knowledge and awareness.
Yeah.
How much is spent? What is the expenditure spent on security?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And the security landscape has changed.
Right. Right.
If you look at it,
Yeah.
it's not only your devices, your servers, your the whole landscape has changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and there is it's become more vast.
Yeah.
The role of a CISO is being challenged,
Right.
right? Because he's got so many permutations and
So- yeah.
combinations to think and discuss.
Yeah.
His time is important.
Yes.
So can you decentralize, right?
It's an interesting thought.
Can you decentralize? Can you delegate?
Yeah.
Right? Can you have, that's why I focus on, can you have hyper specialization in
Right.
those areas? Like, for example, like, one tool does not fit all. Like,
Yeah.
you can't use a Veracode for everything.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can't use a CrowdStrike for everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So one tool does not fit all.
Right.
Right. There's going to be a permutation and combination of tools.
Right.
Right. So one is on the tools aspect.
Hmm.
Right. So understanding the tools, understanding all the different areas when it comes to people, process, technology,
Mhm.
right? Systems, devices. You can take it further, and understanding all what comes in from hey, what are the government regulations? What are the compliance requirements,
Yeah.
etc. How can security be an enabler,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Like, if I tell that, hey, this is Angad certified, or
Yeah.
this is Ofo certified,
Yeah.
right? I know I'm in safe hands,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the kind. So trust
Yeah. It's very important.
is a critical thing. And now you look at it, even in trust, we are moving in, right? We used to focus on VPNs.
Yeah.
Today, we are focusing on a zero trust architecture.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you look at the combination, you see, now what happens is, hey, how you don't want a McKinsey or a Deloitte, or you need specialists who really,
Right.
who really work on these areas to really give that SME knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And if there's something new,
Yeah.
right,
Hmm.
how quickly can you learn? How
Right.
quickly can you adapt?
Adapt to it. Yeah.
Right? That's the key to success. So if you think you can go alone, you will not go far.
Right. Right. Of course not.
It's a team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Hmm.
If I, as Satya, believe that, hey, I have all the knowledge, I'm sorry. I'm only as good as my team. Right?
I'm sure you're being very humble.
No, I'm not. I'm really saying that. And I like to always quote this.
Yeah.
None of us
Yeah.
is smart as both of us put together.
Of course.
So when, as a team, that vision becomes very clear. How do you unite people who have a different behavior, a different specialization, a
Right.
different perspective in life,
Yeah.
with a common vision
Yeah.
and a common goal,
Yeah.
so that everyone sees what is in it for them,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Because today, that what is in it for me becomes very critical,
Hmm.
right? And how do you understand the needs? Like for some people, it's a need,
Yeah.
right? For some people, it's a want.
Yeah.
For some people, it's a desire.
Right.
So how do you make sure that you're able to, so that whole aspect, it's not only about mental health, it's the whole 360 psychological behavioral aspect,
Yeah.
that you will have to look at it and answer
Hmm.
that question, particularly what is in it for them, right?
Right.
So
Right.
what is it for me, what is it for them, and what is it for the system,
Right. Right.
right? So if that vision is very clear from a leadership standpoint,
Yeah.
what happens is, it will really help. It is not
It
only
trickles
about
down.
talking,
Yeah. Of course not.
it
Yeah.
is walking the talk.
Walking the talk. You got to
Right?
lead by example.
You have to lead by example.
Yeah.
And how do you demonstrate that?
Yeah.
Right? So in today's world, right, especially like if you look at it, there are so much things which are fake.
Right.
There are so many things which are artificial.
Right.
Like how do we know if the person is authentic?
Right.
Right? How do we decipher? And in a democracy, right, every view matters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's going to take us a long time to get to a place where everyone has to agree on everything.
Yeah.
But I remember one of the senior leaders mentioning that if everybody agrees
Yeah.
with me on everything,
That's
then I'll tell them, hey, that's not good.
Yeah.
Go back, tell
Yeah.
me why I should not do it.
Yeah. But you should also be able to foster that culture within
Correct.
your team, so that
Correct.
disagreements are encouraged.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I believe in this as a leader, right?
Yeah.
So for me, one of the basic foundations of everything is trust.
Right.
Right? When there is absence of trust,
Mm-hmm.
right, there is fear of conflicts.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you look at it, so conflicts are important, nothing personal. Like, so everyone should be able to provide their views.
Yeah.
Some people talk, some people don't. How do you get people who don't talk to talk?
Yeah.
Right? That's important. And how do you encourage that?
Yeah.
Right? And one of the thing is being a very good listener. Right? Listening is not only on the words, but
Yeah.
on all the other cues. Right? So one of the programs I conducted was in one of my previous organization was Speak Up Listener.
Okay.
Speak Up is for the associates, and Listen Up is for the leaders. Right?
Yeah.
So associates should be able to hey, how do you give them that courage to speak up?
Yeah.
How can they become fearless? Right? So those aspects are key. So what happens is, see, all of us are not perfect.
Yeah. Of course not.
Right? We all come out with our own quirks, our own inconsistencies. But is there a view? Is there a view to hey, I want to be a better version of myself?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But so it all depends on different levers, right? So it's very important to understand from an associate standpoint of view what they're thinking, or which stage of their career are they in.
Yeah.
Right? For some people, money is important.
Yeah.
Some people, title is important.
Yeah.
Some people, flexibility is important.
Right.
Some people, challenge is important. Some people, hey, passion is important. Some people, freedom is important.
Right.
Some people, name is important, fame is important. So you ability to understand the need, and it is and modifying the way you approach it. So that's the leadership style. Like, how do you do that? And it's not an individual, it's an ecosystem of people.
Of course, yeah.
So it involves your HR, it involves your technology leaders, it involves your business leaders, it involves the leader at the top.
Right.
So it's a ecosystem of people. And and how do you bring people together?
Yeah.
See, please understand that dividing and ruling is very easy.
Yeah.
You can see it from the Britishers.
Yeah.
They divided us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They divided us based on religion. They divided us based on caste. They divided us based on, various of color, geographical angle. Yeah. So that, and they ruled over us for X amount of years.
Yeah.
In corporates, people divide and rule.
Yeah.
How many leaders bring people together?
Very few.
How do and help to develop it? So that's the kind of passion. I've seen it in the Tatas. I've seen it in my firm. I've seen it in the firms where I worked. So the ability of a leader to bring people together.
Yeah.
And one more important thing, Angad, I want to mention is that, hey, again, I'll repeat this.
Yeah.
Right. It's important to share what you're thinking. It's important to understand. So I'll give you an example in a meeting, right? In a meeting, if you assume that you're sitting around the table, and everyone agrees with the leader, and by the time it came to your turn, and you wanted to disagree just because everyone else agreed, what do? You disagree. You just go by the flow and you agree.
Yeah.
Just because
people like to confirm and fit in.
Confirm and fitting. Right. So that's one forum, right? So how is the leader coached to make sure
to understand that dynamic?
And the other thing that I know about leaders is how many of the leaders are interested in learning and developing themselves after they become leaders?
Oh yeah.
Right. So these factors matter a lot.
Yes.
These factors matter a lot. Right. Most in most firms, they think that the security leader is a bottleneck.
Yes.
Because
the disciplinarian,
because he guards the firm, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, but the point here is if the cybersecurity leader is able to explain as to what he's trying to do to the firm, right, and how he's protecting the firm, and what it means, right. Hey, on a regular basis, sharing updates, saying that, hey, these were the ransomware attacks that happened in another firm, or in the country, right. These were the threats we got in from an XYZ country.
Give them stories, anecdotes.
Anecdotes. And I'm not saying every day. I'm telling once in 15 days as a fortnightly newsletter, or it could just be a personal conversation.
Yes.
Showing what it means, right? Why, right? Because what most people think is, that, hey, security is the last option. Performance requirements, security requirements, etc., should be at the start of the project.
Yes.
There should be proper due diligence done on security. If you don't do it, you're asking for trouble. So that's where I believe that importance of the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements are very key to success. Right. So whether you're building a product, whether you're building an application, anything for that matter, look at your requirements. I agree that you can't get everything right,
of course,
at the first time. You will have a plan, right? They say if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Right. So you plan on the aspects, come out with milestones, right? And you don't, I'm not saying you need everything figured out at the first go, but have a placeholder, have a team, make sure that there is a cost, there's an allocation of budget to the security, to the performance team, whether it's buying tools, whether it's to buy people and resources, SMEs, make sure those are all there from a project standpoint, and have milestones, right? Because after something happens, we could have done, you'll always do a root cause analysis and say, hey, you could have done this, you could have done that.
Could have, should have.
So that's right? And so that's why I'm saying, so I think security is everyone's responsibility.
Right.
Whether you're an employee, whether you're an user, it's everyone's responsibility.
It is.
So today, if you look at it, we're talking about responsibility in AI. Right? It's a big thing. Right. So what I think of when it comes to AI or Gen AI, what I think of is, are we ready? First thing is, are we ready?
Doesn't matter.
right? So one thing is,
Yeah.
so what are we ready for what?
Yeah.
Right? That is key.
Yeah.
Are we ready to reskill? Right? You
Oh.
have so many employees, right? Are we ready to reskill? You look at organizations like us, we reskill our employees to make sure that they are trained in a new skill, right?
Nice.
So because we are services,
Yeah.
so ready to reskill,
Hmm.
right? That's very important. Are you ready to redesign?
Hmm.
Now you have applications,
Yeah.
you have data.
Yeah.
Now you have a new component which is called AI or generative AI.
Yeah.
So now, are you willing to look at the
Yeah.
whole redesign of the application,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then when you once when you reskill, you'll be able to redesign,
Yeah.
and when you'll be able to redesign, are you doing it responsibly?
Yes.
Right? Are you doing it responsibly, and are you able to redeploy?
Right.
Right? So all these things, right? I believe takes time, right? And when the time to market, like there's hardly any time to market, but I think we have to maintain pace,
Hmm.
have clear cut milestones,
Yeah.
what we're trying to do. And I'm not saying goals don't, or the milestones don't change during the process. They do.
Yeah.
Like it's like who moved my cheese,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So you should be able to adapt.
Right.
So what happens is your flexibility to adapt to change,
Mm-hmm.
and your ability to change, right,
Hmm.
is very critical.
It's Darwinian.
It is Darwinian. So it's a survival of the fittest that is
Yeah,
going to
it
be,
is.
right? So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. So
Yeah.
for me, I mean, as a leader,
Mm-hmm.
as a person very interested in innovation, very interested in security,
Mm-hmm.
as a leader, what I look for is, hey, what can I do to help accelerate?
How good is that? Yeah.
So that is where I look at it. Hey, how can I build that capability?
Yeah.
How can I research on that capability? How can I demo that capability?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
add value
Yeah.
in the whole, with whatever data and tools that I have. So that's where I look at it as a leader. So for me, leadership in this generation is critical, and I believe
Yeah.
everyone is a leader in their own right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's that whole circle needs to be full,
Mm-hmm.
right? They may not be the it may not be the perfect blend of everything,
Yeah.
but how do we move towards it,
Right.
So finally, companies will look at ROI,
Mm-hmm.
return on investment.
Yeah.
That's one thing. They'll look at operational efficiencies.
Yeah.
They'll look at regulatory and compliance.
Yeah.
So primarily 3 or 4 different
Sustainability.
sustainability is
Yeah.
now a big thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So they will look at probably 4 or 5 verticals, and
Right.
and focus on those, innovation being the other one.
Yeah.
Right? So these are some of the things that I personally look at. And because with next year I'll finish 25 years of experience.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very humbling that I have to still learn today. So
Right.
so that's
See, you said, you just mentioned that there's a new vertical that you're getting into. Right?
correct.
Oh, what is that?
So the vertical that I'm getting into is, it's called high technology.
Okay.
So if you look at, our firm was primarily focused into BFSI,
Mm-hmm.
and we focused on niche areas in BFSI, working on banking, financial services, and insurance.
Right.
Now we're working, working on the high technology space from a
Okay.
technology standpoint. Anything that is not BFSI.
Okay. Okay.
So if you look at anything that is not BFSI, it could be, when you look at high technology firms, it could be technology firms like the Googles of the world, and the
Right.
Microsofts of the world, or the Adobes of the world.
Yeah.
It could be semiconductor firms, it could be consumer electronics. So looking at all those areas, from a technology standpoint, and how you can provide services.
Got it. Got it. All right. So Satya, how do people reach out to you? How do they get to talk to you? Like I have had the opportunity.
Sure. Well, first of all, Angad, thanks for this opportunity. And how people can really reach out to me is, hey, I'm available on LinkedIn. I have a profile in LinkedIn, so you can always message me on LinkedIn, and I'm okay to share my personal email ID as well as my contact number.
Mm-hmm.
You can always reach out to me, and if there's any way I can help, I would really like to do it.
That's amazing. Satya, this was an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed every moment of it.
Thanks, Angad. Thanks a lot. Thank you
Thanks
very
a lot.
much.
Thanks.